Hey folks, this is Eli, and welcome back to Elfbait. It's time for the Monday night game recap. We're in session 2 of Valmorgen's Ledger, the 5th edition adventure I'm running for my currently still two-man party of adventurers. We have Ramas, the human fighter, and Arwen, the elven cleric, war cleric. So when we last left our two characters, they had taken down a small group of the Red Hen Bandit Brotherhood that they had run into while trying to head off the band that had stolen Valmorgen's ledger. They managed to come upon them at night. The battle didn't go as well as they had hoped. Arwen had taken some damage, and he managed to expend about half of his supply of arrows. So anyways, so after dealing with that, they tied up all of the bandits, and there was some interrogation. Ramas led the interrogation, all of this being done in common because Ramas does not speak the local human tongue. So as he's interrogating the bandits, they're reasonably and full of themselves, like bandits are going to tend to be, and are not telling him much to begin with. From here, he then resorts to more persuasive tactics. Ramas takes out his sharp blade, because remember, he carries the two scimitars. One is sharp and one is blunt. He tends to lead with the blunt one and then pull out the sharp one when things get nasty. So he pulls out the sharp blade and proceeds to shave the cheek of one of the captured bandits while interrogating him. This proves successful, and he manages to get some information. Right now, they're really just pushing for information as to what they might find at White Crag Fortress, or where the ledger is. When they searched these bandits, they did find the other possessions from Valmorgen's procession, but they did not find the ledger or Valmorgen's associates. And so the bandits, during the interrogation, inform Ramas that they had handed off the ledger to a rider, and that the captives were sent off with another group. So at this point, they make camp for the rest of the night, and head out the following morning, heading south again. At this point, White Crag is still to the northwest of them, but they now have 5 bandits. One of them didn't make it, but they have 5 bandits in tow, so they decide to go back to Coulter's Cove. So a little bit of metagaming here. Right now, Derek, the experienced player in my party, is stalling for time. We're still down 2 of what was only going to be a 3-man. We're still down to 2 of what was only going to be a 3-man party. Initially 4, but 3 ended up coming through. But at this point, my brother had been held up, and so was running about an hour late. So Derek was trying to stall for some time in the game, and it made sense to take the bandits back to the nearest city. So they had avoided going to Coulter's Cove before because it looked like a gloomy, dark place full of whale oil and fish stink. But they go back with the bandits in tow. The locals are a little bit surprised to see them. You have an elven cleric clad in his chainmail, and this dark-skinned foreigner in the form of Ramas. She's not a local. He looks different, and so they continue on with into the town, and then they're met by the town's mayor, who they engage in a conversation with over what to do with the bandits. And basically they went to collect the bounty. They've been told in barley that the bounty was 10 ahead. At this point, the mayor kind of chuckles at them and says, no, 5 is all I offer. And when Ramas questions the mayor on this, the mayor explains that perhaps 10 gold is a price fitting for a small village, but that such bandits really aren't much of a threat to a city like Coulter's Cove, and that just really isn't as much money to be had in bounty hunting. There is some interplay there where Moss manages to talk him up to 6 gold a head, and the mayor decides to throw in a meal and suggests that the party go down to the Fluke, which he then points is downhill, downhill being towards the water in Coulter's Cove. So they proceed downhill, and they're taking note of all the large multi-story wooden dwellings that kind of arc over the main street, and just various layer upon layer of construction, all huddling onto this hill to form this kind of sprawling city. It's a city. I mean, Coulter's Cove is a city, but it's not a city in the classic sense of stonework and cobbles everywhere. This is the main road down the center of the city is still mud. There are boardwalks and in steps down the street, down the hill. The city is guarded not by a stone wall or anything, but there is a palisade on an earth embankment with stone fortresses and mini keeps spaced along its length. So it's a modest city, but it is a city still. The harbor is full of ships, and so there's clearly some money here, but they just don't build in stone for whatever reason. So they get to the Fluke. They find that the Fluke is kind of this establishment designed to vaguely resemble the bow of a sailing ship. It's not a sailing ship bow. It's just built to kind of have that angle and everything. And the sign is legitimately a large whale fluke, very, very, notably large whale fluke that's been preserved and hung from a actual ship's bowsprit over the street. So they go in, they find that the this eatery, it's not so much an inn, but just more of a meal house, is just bustling, and it's a long description of food and frolic, and everybody's having a good time. Seems to be in good spirits around here, and so they sit down to eat. And they get their food from the server here, and they're eating, and they strike up conversations with the locals, trying to gather some more information about White Crag Fortress. So White Crag Fortress is on the coast, so they figured that some of the local fishermen and whalers may have had some experience with it. They find out, though, that it's kind of considered a haunted place. There's some superstition surrounding it, and nobody really spends too much time around there. Most fishermen avoid the area, the waters around it. But they do find out through some discussion some of the local tales and stuff. They spend a good hour or so game time here, just gathering information. Arwen is kind of enamored by the local tales. Seems to be wanting to learn more about these hauntings and these ghosts and stuff, and the stories of mermaids and sea princes and all of that. Excuse me, I'm picking up a bug or something. But anyways, at the end of it, they've come out with some information. 2 pieces of information that might lead them to finding out more about the area around White Crag. They've learned that there is a chart master who could certainly go ahead and give them information on the waters around the area. And Arwen has found out that it might be a good idea to maybe try to speak to the harbor master in regard to local lore. This man is kind of a hub in the area, of course. He's the harbor master. Pretty much everything that comes in or out of the port filters past him in some fashion. So they head down to the waterfront. They find a large building, very administrative kind of a structure. It's got a tower on the top with a lantern, lantern light, basically lighthouse kind of an affair up there. It's not lit because it's still daytime, but they get in there and it's just bustling. It's several tables with lots of clerks and stuff in there, and they're all having, multiple patrons thrusting papers and permits and receipts and stuff at them, and it becomes very clear that this is not going to be a quick process. There are page boys running things back and forth. They do figure out where the harbor master and the chart master are, but while they're waiting to get some information, a large man kind of hulks his way in and pushes them out of the way. Just a big man mountain of a kind of a guy who clearly, from one of the locals, and they get some information on him from some of the other folks standing around. But there's a moment of tension where it looks like there might be a fight, and as a couple of the guards start coming down from the balcony up above, which is where the harbor master's office seems to be, Ramas makes a point to point out to the thick-necked man that he looks like he might be getting into some trouble if he keeps trying to bully his way through. So, kind of diffuse the situation as he's not about to start a fight here. That's gonna affect his money, because I mean that's really his work. So, having cleared that out, the clerk at the table is thankful, and he's the one who provides them with the information as to where they can find the chart keeper. And then notice I said keeper because up to this point there's been talk of the chart master, and but the clerk here calls him the chart keeper, and then he also points Arwen out to the excuse me, I've been saying Arwen, I do apologize, it's Alwyn. Keep thinking the Lord of the Rings stuff, but Alwyn points Alwyn up to the harbor master's office. So this is where we kind of split the party. Now with a party of two, that's an interesting prospect. But so Ramas heads to the kind of the ground floor back office where the chart keeper is, and he's been told that if he brings the chart keeper a cup of tea, it'll quickly endear him to the man. So he makes a side trip to a kitchen in the back and asks some of the page boys that are resting back there, how we can go about getting some tea. They help him get the tea, and he takes it to the chart keeper and knocks on the door. Now he notices when he gets there that the sign says chart keeper, but the word keeper has been scratched out, and master has been painted underneath that. So this is giving kind of a little bit of an insight into the character of the man that he's about to meet. This is somebody who either feels unappreciated or has an elevated sense of who they are and what they do. So he enters into a small room, just lined to the wall, up and down every wall with rolls of charts and books of charts and everything. And so the strikes up a conversation with the chart master, trying to find out some information as to what's going on. It is, he tells him where he's going, tries to get some information. An old chart is pulled out, but it's a very vague chart. It's old. It actually predates the current vassalry and dates to the earlier days of the High Kingdom. So it's an older chart from when and it does show some information there. At this point, I did have Derek make a couple of insight checks for Ramas to see if he could note anything that was on the chart. He didn't learn anything new from the chart. So while this is going on, Alwyn has gone upstairs and finds a kind of a lobby waiting room, ante room there, with a wall of windows and a door at the back of it. He can hear somebody kind of bellowing from inside, and there are several well-dressed nautical sorts waiting out and about on benches out in that room. They're clearly more important than the usual greasy, oily, wet and drowned rat looking fellows that they've been running into around town. And they don't smell of as much of whale oil or fish guts. So it's kind of surmised that they are either captains or higher ranked officers and stuff from the various vessels. He goes up and so now Alwyn walks right up and just knocks on the door. He doesn't know really, what's going on here. He's a wood elf from kind of the other side of the vassalry. He doesn't know nautical stuff, doesn't know nautical sorts, and he's a war priest, so it's not like, he's really got any connection. So he's just going to go up and knock on the door. There's a bark and a bellow from the room on the other side, and some of the men sitting out there chuckle, and they kind of berate him a bit for just being so, bold as to just walk up and knock on the harbor master's door. And Alwyn does some questioning here and finds out that really, I mean, the harbor master's a busy man. He doesn't take anybody in there without an appointment. That's why they're there. They're waiting for their appointment. Now, I didn't mean for this particular game session to turn into a lot of bureaucracy, but that's where it went. And seeing as we're completely off script for the adventure here, and still waiting to actually get into the nitty gritty of the White Crag Fortress, I'm just rolling with it. I'm having fun. I'm using silly voices and playing various NPCs around the town. So Alwyn goes downstairs and gets in line at the clerk's desk to try and make his appointment. The line is long. He's looking for quite a bit of a wait. There are many people there already. So while he's doing this is also while the discussion with the chart master is going on. So Ramas comes out to find Alwyn still in queue, and tells him that he got some information. He's going to go look for an inn. Does Alwyn want to come with him? Because it's getting late. They're going to have to stay the night. The chart master had suggested the boarding house he lives in, but it was not to Ramas's liking. So Ramas walks off while there's still daylight, and goes to find an inn. Tells Alwyn that if he doesn't see him before tomorrow, he'll meet him back here. So Alwyn waits in line and does his finally gets his turn, and he goes through and finds out that really it's if he's going to see the harbor master, it's going to be a couple of days. Harbor master is a busy man. He's only taking official business until a couple of days from now, wherein he'll have his first opportunities for general inquiries and none. And so actually, I got to back up a second because that happened while Ramas was still there. So Ramas wanders off because Alwyn is taking his time. So Alwyn finds out that he really doesn't have the time. As he's about to walk away, he notices that the clerk is tapping his fingers, clearly looking for a tip. And so he puts out a gold coin. And then, in an odd twist, tries to get more information from the clerk. The clerk had volunteered quite a bit of information regarding what's going on as far as White Crag and as far as he'd tried to help. I mean, clearly Alwyn was an out-of-towner, and he had been kind enough earlier to stop the big brute from harassing the clerk down there. So he tried to help out, but he's a little incensed that Alwyn would then try to get more information after tipping him for giving him what he did. He slides the coin under the books, looks around, clearly a little taken off guard, doesn't want to make a big deal about the fact that he's accepting money. And so then Alwyn leaves. At this point, it's dark, and I described to Alwyn how the city is changing. The bustling crowds of fishermen and porters and stuff have all kind of disappeared, and now we're looking at groups of men in good spirits wandering in and about various inns and taverns. Red lanterns are coming on in upstairs windows, and the nightlife is coming out. And so he's wandering along. The intent, I guess, to be looking for Ramas, because he doesn't know what inn Ramas went to. He just went to an inn. So Alwyn is going to wander around looking for a foreigner, who should be easy to point out, because he's the only Bukharan in the area, very likely, or he might not be because it is a coastal town, but he's going to be one of few at best, or at worst, I should say. So as he's walking along, he starts to hear footsteps behind him, and he turns around, and there are two men in jackets, currently just silhouetted by the moon. He sees a glint of gold coming from the mouth of one of them as he speaks. He speaks with very kind of a lilting, genial voice. Sort of think, I guess you could think kind of Jack Sparrow, but not quite as, sun-dazed and drunk. and his fellow is kind of a broader man about the same height. So they're talking to Alwyn and asking him what he's doing out here, and Alwyn lets spill that he's looking for his friend. And they're like, "Oh, your friend. Well, fine. Tell us about the man. Perhaps we've seen him." And so as Alwyn starts describing him, they're like, "Oh, yes. I haven't met the man, but I think I might have seen him. If you follow us, we can take you. Maybe we can help you find him." And so they start leading Alwyn along, and Alwyn goes with him. I have to admit, as a DM, I'm a little amazed that he's going to wander off with strangers. But hey, he's playing his character; it's his character, and so Alwyn follows these two strangers down a side road. At which point they're all along they're chatting him up and kind of trying to get more information about Rumas, and potential other trouble that they might get from harassing the elf. I mean, the elf's wearing chainmail and he's got a warhammer, so he's not a simple man. Clearly, he's not just your common folk, but he is kind of a rube. He's a wood elf in a rough and tumble seaside city that full of whalers and fishermen. So at that point, the Alwyn doesn't succeed on a perception check and feels a blade at his back. The demeanor of the two men changes, and he is now asked to surrender his coin. So here's where we get to some dice play in, because Alwyn tries to stall. He's kind of, I believe that Alwyn's player Craig is kind of trying to catch up here. He's brand new to gaming, to tabletop gaming, so he's still coming to terms with how the sheet translates into role playing, and so he's trying to bide for time. I'm like, okay, if you're going to try and stall, are you trying to stall? Roll a persuasion. I figured persuasion's a good skill to use for trying to stall, and so he succeeds, and he manages to stall him out. He succeeds on a second persuasion, which stalls him out more. At this point, I figure that whatever initiative the person behind him had has since lapsed, and so I have them roll initiative again, because now Alwyn decides that his next action is going to be he's already handed over some coin. As part of that second persuasion, he sort of convinced them that he had less coin on him than he did, so he handed them like 15 gold or something like that. And as they're distracted by that, he spins around and tries to deck the person behind him. He manages to hit, but doesn't do much damage. But initiative, he has the initiative, and so combat starts. They miss. In the next round, he disengages and starts running. So we roll for a couple of checks to do a chase, and Alwyn makes it out into the night. At that point, we ran out of time, so we kind of had to call it for the night. Lots and lots of role playing, so not too much in the progression of the plot. My third player did not show. Basically, got tied up too long to where it just wasn't worth it for him to show up to play. So at this point, they are waiting to hear back from the chart master, because he said if they were going to be around for a day, he might be able to get them a boat that could take them to White Crag. The game is progressing a little slower than I had planned, but there's some good role playing. Craig is learning. I think this might actually be a blessing in disguise, because Craig is getting a chance to kind of get his feet wet and learn how the dice work and everything before we really get into combat and stuff. So combat, though, is a little bit more straightforward in my mind, and so the role playing aspects are probably where you need more training in gaming. So hopefully next session, which may be a couple of weeks out because the holidays are coming up, and then folks have some work related things that are going to possibly keep them from showing up. But White Crag is hopefully in the future. There are some things that depending on how this goes, this meeting with the ship captain is going to take them out there to White Crag. We'll see what strategy they come up with, because I still think that the idea now is, now that they know that they've probably lost their opportunity or pretty much know that they've lost their opportunity to intercept the book, intercept Valmorgen's ledger from getting back to the fortress. They're going to have to take the fortress, or at least enter the fortress. And so right now it's a matter of strategizing to find out what method they're going to use. A frontal assault on an old fortress, dilapidated as it may be, is probably the less ideal option. So they're looking for other options for getting into the keep at this point, or at least finding out if there are any vulnerabilities. So we'll see where they go next time. Really, from a metagaming standpoint, this was kind of a fun game. It's also a really good example of how you can pace a game to deal with unforeseen events like a late player or a small party. I feel if you're going to have a smaller party, you're probably going to have your players and their characters rightfully spend a little bit more time planning for the various steps of the adventure. Nobody's going to go blither. You're going to have fewer people willing to blither in. Now, as a DM, it's an interesting prospect as well, because you can't be as loose with your hazards as you would with a larger party. My Sunday